Gairtushtuvam Vyashema Devahitai Yadayuhu Swastinaha Indro Vridrashravaha Swastinaha Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinaha Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu Yo Antaha Pravishya Mamavacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjeevayati Akila Shakti Daraswadamna Anyamshcha Hastacharana Shravanatvagādīn Prāṇān Namo Bhagavate Purushāya Tubhyam Lasatu Śrīmad Ānandatīrtendurno Hrudambare Yadvachaschandrika Swanta Santapam Vinikrantati Padavakya Pramānaඥān Pranamya Shirasa Gurūn Vyakarishye Yatābhotam Vishnu Tattva Vinirnayam Devam Narayanam Natva Sarvadosha Vivarjitam Paripurnam Gurumshchan Gitartam Vakshami Leshataha. So good evening everyone. Welcome to part 6 of the quintessence of Vedic philosophy, which is chapter 15th of the Bhagavad Gita. As we make our journey towards this wonderful chapter, we're going to do a recap. And as you know, we've spent the last 4 weeks doing the first 5 verses of Bhagavad Gita. So today we are going to recap. Before we do that, Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. So the first 5 verses, we have Pavan Kumar ji from Charlotte in North Carolina, who is going to do us the summary of the first 5 slides. So Pavan, if you could introduce yourself, tell us about yourself to the rest of the group, and then you can, the stage is yours and you can start your presentation.
Thank you very much, Madhuji, and thanks for the opportunity to give a summary. Been really enjoying the company, really enjoying the classes, and learning a lot from you folks. So really appreciate the opportunity. My name is Pavan Kumar Gadichadla. I'm actually Madhu's cousin, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and originally from Bangalore, lived in Guntur. In fact, actually, Madhu's mom and my mom, they go to the same guru in Bangalore. They've done the Sudha Pata for like many years, and I'm a novice in this. I'm just starting to learn and starting to understand. So please bear with me if there are any mistakes. Please forgive and please correct me if there is any errors in it. Again, thanks for the opportunity. And before I do, what I would like to do is just go through the first 5 verses. Just go through, read them, the first 5 verses. Vyasaya Bhavanashaya Srishaya Gunarashe Hridyaya Shuddha Vidya Madhvaya Cha Namo Namah Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhva Mula Madashakam Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chamdamsi Yasya Paranani Yastam Vedasa Vedavid Adashrodhvam Prashutasya Shaka Gunapravriddhi Vishwasya Pravala Adasya Mula Nyanyu Santatani Karmanubandhini Manushya Loke Narupamasye Tata Falabhyate Nanto na Chadir Nacha Sampratishtha Ashwatthamenam Suvirudha Moolam Asanga Shastrena Drunena Chitva Tatah Param Tat Parimargitavyam Yasmin Gata Nanivartanti Bhuya Tameva Chadhyam Purusham Prapadye Yathaf Pravriti Prasruta Purani Nirmana Moha Jita Sanga Dosha Adhyatma Nitya Vinivritta Kama Dvandvair Vimukta Sukha Dukkha Sangyai Gachyanta Muda Padamavyam Tata. So these are the first 5 verses Madhuji has talked to us so far. And the next 4 slides, I just want to give a brief understanding of what I have so far. And so starting with slide 1. So the first 2.5 slokas, right? So it's all about the description and illustration of samsara, right? And then here it talks about samsara being in the form of ashwatha tree. So as part of understanding samsara, we need to know about the urdhva mula, the Narayana, the Vishnu. Right? The urdhva means three. So there are three mulas responsible for the creation of the srishti. So urdhva mula, this is the Chit Prakriti, Lakshmi, Achit, Jada Prakriti, and Narayana, the Vishnu. Right? So when you think about this tree, the life in the tree is the Chit Prakriti, the Lakshmi, and Adhara for it, who's the main Adhara for it to grow, for the life, is Narayana, Vishnu, right? And then this concept of the Jada Prakriti, the tree, the leaves, and the fruits that come along within the tree, and this concept of samsara is like a ashwatha tree, and it will not grow without Adhara, that is Vishnu, and it's the samsara, this tree is not staying still, it's constantly moving, changing, and is indestructible. So to understand samsara, right, we need to know about the mula, the Vishnu, and the purpose of these leaves, these branches, this shakha, and these leaves are like these Vedas, right? So we learned that there are so many different Vedas, and I know there's been so many other classes that Madhuji has taken on these Vedas, and these are these treasures that help us understand the Urdhva Mula. Next slide. And then the verse 2, it continues to talk about this samsara as it keeps growing. As it keeps growing, the branches, the shaka, it keeps growing upwards and downwards, and as part of this samsara, we need to understand, what is needed for shrishti or the samsara, right? What is currently there in the jada for shrishti, and this concept of mula prakriti, right? So what is there now and what is needed in the future for the samsara are these mula prakritis. So what are these mula prakritis? And Madhuji talked about these mula prakritis are this combination of these gunas, right? The rajas, sattva, and tamas, along with this the bhuta sukshmas, right? Mahat, buddhi, ahamkara, all these together are these mula prakritis. And these mula prakritis are there in Manusha Loka, and it's there in Pindanda and also in Brahmanda. And these mula prakritis, these are responsible for how you are as a person, as a human being, and they grow based on your guna pravruddha, right? And also this concept of the human form is the only form that has this karmanubandhini, right? The fruits are bestowed as per the karmas done by the jivas, and this human form is a sadhana sharira. So you have to do sadhana to understand the mula, the Vishnu, to understand why he has created us and what's the purpose of our lives, and also this interesting concept of asvatantra, right? I'm not the doer. Don't get into the hamkara that I've done everything. In all this, it is the supreme that is there inside you that is making you do the right things, right? And then the next slide. So, and then the first half of the verse 3 is, that's where we come to the description of samsara comes to an end. It talks about explaining the vriksha, the samsara vriksha, and it's very difficult to comprehend. So, what is the swarupa of this vriksha? And how does it stand in this world is not known. And Madhuji talked about a little bit on this. And then we went into this, the samsara, the description of samsara, and how this tree gets into this it's very deep rooted, right? And then how do you break from this bondage of these roots? And we have to cut through these samsara roots, and for this, God's grace is essential. Right? To me, one of this very profound verse within this is this asanga shastre drunena chitva, which I thought was very, very powerful, because what it says is that you need to have a very strong asanga shastra. So what is this asanga shastra? This is that you need the shastra is join a sajjana rasanga, like this group, right? And the shastra is the gnana shastra of Vishnu. Understand, be with a good sangha and learn about Vishnu, the supreme. And how do you learn? And this through, everybody does different ways. So some of them do prayers, some of them learn Vedas, and some of them be part of the Sajjanara group to understand about Vedas and the philosophy, right? So these are the different ways you can break yourself from this bondage. And that's the continuation we learned in verse 4 is, how do you break from this bondage, right? And you have to surrender to Vishnu to break from this bondage. And as part of this, you need to understand the dependence of Mula Prakritis, right? This Jada and Jivas on Brahman. You need to understand the dependence of these two. You need to surrender to Vishnu to learn about him. This Yathartha Gnana will then lead us to Yasmin Gatha, the liberation. And how do you surrender to him? As we talked about, the different ways: Dhyana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Gnana Yoga. The different ways you can you can surrender to him. And then lastly, last week I thought was fantastic. He talked about Madhuji talked about this 5th verse, right? This is an extraction from chapter 8 to 12, and talks about this practicalities of what we should do for eradication of samsara. So far we talked about what is samsara, how is samsara, and what do you need to do to eradicate yourself, in how samsara is deep rooted, and what is it you need to do to liberation. And how do you eradicate samsara? And this was interesting about this 20-point program that Madhuji talked about last week, about this external discipline qualities, the internal discipline qualities, how do you control your indriyas, and then the ahamkara that lies right in the middle of it, right? So once ahamkara comes, God goes away. So how do you control your discipline, your qualities, internal qualities? And then this dvandva, the concept of dvandva, the sukha, dukkha, the attachment and excessive attachment. And what do you do? What other sadhanas do you do? Be aware of these dvandvas. At the same time, how do you get rid of it? You have to contemplate. You have to learn. You have to stop interacting with bad people, bad company, gossip, and spend some time. Like how this group does on a regular, constant basis. Understand the scriptures. And that's how you get your tattva gnana, the truth, the ultimate knowledge, right? And this verse 5, I thought was, again, it talks about nirmana moha, see, not have the me and mine, which is the root cause of samsara. And it comes from jita sangha dosha, the sangha, the attachment, right? How do you get rid of this attachment? Always adhyatma nitya, always, every second do chintane of supreme, the adhika atma. Who's the adhika atma is the Vishnu. And then this vinivritta kama, without any expectation, nishkama. And once you do that, you'll get a lot closer to supreme. And then this whole concept of dvandve vimuktaha, they understand and tolerate the dvandvas in life, the positives and negatives, the sukha and dukkha, they all come together. So the main, the summary of this verse 5, I would say would be, if you do sadhana, you study the supreme and you surrender, you will be liberated and there will be no dvandvas, right? But then how do you do sadhana? I thought it was very interesting that Madhuji last week was able to connect it to the Sikshavali, and I've been learning Sikshavali, and it was very interesting to talk about this swadhyaya pravachanecha, right? And how do you do sadhana? Swadhyaya pravachanecha. Swa, do self-study, study of the swas, supreme, and do pravachana, and be with the like-minded and learn more from this group. So with that, hand it over to Madhuji. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pavanji, thank you very much. That was a very good summary of what we've done for the past 4 weeks. So I just want to finish off this introductory session by Shushruth Kulkarni and requesting him to recite the first 5 verses. Just to remind you, this group, when we took up the study of Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, we took an oath, I think, that all of us over the next 6 to 8 weeks, we will memorize chapter 15 and we will digest chapter 15 and make an attempt to adopt this in our life. So that's the oath that we have taken. So with that spirit, I've requested Shushruth Kulkarni to recite the first 5 verses. I know he is religiously memorizing chapter 15. So Shushruth, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Madhu. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for everything you've done so far. And we will continue to learn from you. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha Atha Panchadashodhyayah Purana Purushottama Yogaha Shri Bhagavanuvacha Urdhvamulamadash Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Paranani Yastam Veda Savedavit Adhaschodvam Prasutastasya Shakhaha Gunapravriddha Vishaya Pravalaha Adhascha Mulani Anusantatani Karamanubandhini Manushya Narupamasyeha tatopalabhyate Nanto na chadir na cha sampratishtha Ashvattamenam suvirudamulam Asanga shastrena dridhena chitva Tatatpadam tatparimargitavyam Yasmin gata nivartanti bhuyaha Tameva chadyam purusham prapadye Yata pravrittir prasuta purani Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha Adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama Dvandvair vimukta sukha dukkha sangai Gachanti mudha padamavyayam tat.
Beautiful, Shushot. That was so beautiful. Thank you very much. Very, very melodious. You do have a very good voice. We never realized you had hidden talents. That was really very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Nita for the training.
So as we make our journey, as I said, into chapter 15, we are just now entering into the next half, as it were, verse 6 of the chapter 15. Now, as I told you before, the first 18 verses are the key verses, and 19 and 20 is the Palasloka, as it were. So we are making entry into the sixth verse. What I requested is Chitra Sudarshanji to recite us the verses 6 to 8, and then we will make entry into the sixth verse. Chitra.
Thank you, Madhu. न तत्पासयते सूर्यो न च शाङ्को न पावकः यत्कत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम ममैवांशो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनः षष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात्. Thank you,
Wonderful.
Madhu.
Thank you, Chitra. Beautiful, beautiful. That was excellently rendered. Thank you. So let's move directly into our sixth verse. So before we understand the sixth verse, let's go and delve into the deep philosophy that was there in the last line of the fifth verse. And it says, Gachanti amudaha padam avyayam tat. Gachanti means what? They go. Amudaha means what? Mudas are the idiots and the ignorance. Amudas are the knowledgeable ones. Where do the knowledgeable ones go? They go to Padam Avyayam Tat. So we left it last week there. So Avyayam means that which is indestructible, that which is eternal. And Padam is a complicated word. It can mean various things in various contexts, but here it means abode or me. They come to my abode, they surrender and come to my feet, they stay with me, they reside in where I live. Yeah. So that Padam is celebrated in Katha Upanishad as Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam. So that Padam is the abode of Lord Vishnu. That's what Yama teaches Nachiketa. Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam. And if you go to Taittiriya Upanishad, if you go to Brahmavali, very first verse, the famous verse, it starts like this: Om Brahmavid Apnoti Param. So he who knows about Brahman, Apnoti, he reaches Param. Param is what? The supreme Narayana, Vishnu. He reaches the Vishnu. When I say he reaches Vishnu, it means he reaches the abode of Lord Vishnu, the one who knows the knowledge, one who knows Yathartha Jnana, eventually will make his way towards the abode of Vishnu. So these two verses should tell us immediately, the Vedas and the Upanishads are very clear. They're telling us we will reach that abode. We will go to that abode. We will reach that abode where Lord Vishnu is. We are not going to become Lord Vishnu. I just want to remind you and put it there because every verse in the Upanishad needs to be seen very carefully. So here it clearly says you reach some other place, you reach a destination. Now, this padam is very interesting. So what does this pada or padam actually mean? So let's go to Purusha Shukta, which we have done before. It says what? Yetavanasya mahima ato jayamshta purushaha pado asya vishwabhutani tripadasya amrutandivi. Tripad urdva udait purushaha pado asya iha abhavat punaha. So Purusha Shukta of the Rig Veda also talks about this padam. It says pada there means a fraction, an aspect, or one rupa or a swarupa of the Supreme Lord. It says one aspect of him is in this material creation, and it says three aspects of him is in Divi. Divi means Muktasthana. Divi means Muktasthana or Moksha or Vaikunta, and Vedas also celebrate this as Parama Vyoma. Okay. So now, what are the mukta sthanas that we know of as Vedas describe? So that padam, that abode, what are those abodes? So when Purusha Shukta says tripadasya amrutan devi, amruta means moksha, tripad means three of my aspects, my three aspects are in the moksha. What are those three aspects? And the Vedas describe this. To understand the three aspects, we need to understand what do the Vedas describe about the three places of moksha. Yeah, it talks about Shvetadipa, Anantasana, and Vaikunta. So those are the three stations in moksha. Now, it is again the scriptures tell us in these three stations, the forms of the Lord is celebrated with certain names. Shvetadipa is Narayana, Anantasana is Padmanabha, and in Vaikunta he is called as Vaikunta. And he's also got other names there: Amruta, Kshema, Abhaya. You might have heard about these names in various books that you might have read, but just to remind you, so these are all the names of the Lord. So when there is names of Vishnu, one thing that we need to understand there is, you and me, for us names is a noun. Somebody calls me Madhusudan because I'm not Madhusudana. It's just my name is Madhusudan. My name is a noun. But for the Supreme Being, his name or his adjectives. So we need to understand that every name is an adjective for the Supreme. It celebrates a quality of the Supreme. So similarly, Amruta, Kshema, Abhaya, they are all names that celebrate its qualities. Similarly, Narayana, Padmanabha, Vaikunta, and so on. So when Purusha Shukta says Tripadasya Amrutan Divi, that is the same pada that comes here, Gachanti Amudaha, Padam Avyayam Tat, which is the same as Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam, which is the same as what Taittiriya Upanishad says, Brahmaved Apnoti Param. Okay, so these three aspects or forms of the Lord is always there permanently in Shvetadipa, Anantasana, and Vaikunta. Okay, similarly, his abodes are also there permanently. They are called, as I said, they are the Shvetadipa, Anantasana, and Vaikunta. Okay, so now coming to the lower aspect of this particular slide, so we spent a lot of time talking about how the jivas have linga sharira, and then how they acquire stula sharira or gross body, and they go through samsara. Once they realize that they're wasting their time here, they start doing sadhanas. And when we were talking about sadhanas, I spoke to you about the swastika symbol, and we discussed the symbology of the swastika symbol, and we said if you practice what is said, what is the symbolism of swastika, then you will shed your linga sharira and you will cross to the other side. One thing I did not discuss last time is when you do the swastika symbol, you also put 4 dots. Yeah. So what are those dots and what do they actually represent? So can I get some volunteers to start contributing here, please? What do we think those 4 dots represent? The clue is there in the figure itself, but tell us what you aware or what you know about those 4 dots, please. Any volunteers? Yeah.
just taking the clue from the question you asked, they represent the four stations once the jiva goes through the Sahasrara, goes into perhaps the Pitraloka, Chandraloka, Satyaloka, waits there and then gets to moksha?
Yeah. So, Suresh, thank you. So that I think you're right. So that is once you shed your linga sharira and you've gone to the liberated state, when you've gone to the non-material abode, the Vedas then describe about 4 ways in which these jivas actually are positioned in in moksha. So it talks about salokya, then it talks about samipya, then sa rupya and sa yujya. So in that order, salokya, samipya, sa rupya and sa yujya. So those are the 4 ways in which the jivas actually, that is how they are in liberation. So salokya means, loka means the place. So exactly the place where the supreme is. So this is like I am in Nottingham. So that is a salokya. Okay. Now, Samipya is I'm very close to Shushruth Kulkarni. So that is Samipya. So I'm very close. I'm in the same street as where Narayana is. So that is Samipya. Then Sarupya is I assume a form which is very similar to Narayana. And Sayujya means I actually go inside him and I stay with him, inside his Sachitananda Swarupa. So that is Sayujya. So many Abhimani Devatas that come in Vedas, we discussed all the Vedic pantheon and how Surya is the Abhimani Devata of ice, how Chandra is Abhimani Devata, and so on. So when you study Upanishads, for example, when you study Aitareya, Maha Aitareya Upanishad of Rig Veda, that describes all this in detail and how these Abhimani Devatas are in Sayujya. They are right inside the Supreme Being and they come out of his and they are worshipping him right inside him. Whereas what is our position? Are we going to be Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya? Nobody knows. We'll have to just do our sadhanas and then find out where we stand. What is our qualification as to where we stand in liberation? So that is what the Vedas are telling us about these 4 stations. When you look at Gachanti Amudaha Padam Avyayam Tat, think about these concepts that Vedas and Upanishads talk about quite frequently. Yeah, so moving on to the next slide. So now once you know that you are in this, so you are in state of liberation, you are in these 4 stations, you are in that liberation. What Krishna then does, what Vedavyasa then does is, he tells you, so remember, this is Purushottama Yoga. This is a yoga this is the chapter that celebrates the greatness of the Supreme and what his Swarupa is. So now what Vyasa is saying is, I've told you so far about the samsara, how to get rid of it. Now I'm going to tell you, once you go and cross over to the other side, I just want to give you a glimpse or an idea as to how that place is going to be like, how that place where liberated souls are, how are they going to be like, is what the next verse is. So again, as you can see, every verse in Gita is connected to the next verse, and it is a seamless progression from one verse to another verse. And this is something that you need to watch when you study Gita, because then it becomes more logical and more interesting. It's almost like a story. So now the jiva has gone to liberation. Vyasa is saying, you know how that place is? Natad basayate suryo, na shashankaha, na pavakaha. Yad gatva na nivartante taddama paramam mama. Again, he brings that place. Gachanti amudaha padam avyayam tat. Nanivartanti bhuyaha. So he keeps saying that stresses again and again. If you reach that place, you will not come back. And he's saying the same thing here. Yad gatva, as you go there, na nivartanti taddama paramamama. So you go to the first line now. So what is that first line is saying? Natad basayate suryo na shashankaha na pavakaha. So this needs to be opened up for deep philosophical inquiry. So Gita is an Upanishad, yeah. It is also an essence of Upanishads. And in internal evidence in Gita itself, Krishna will say you need to look at it as Adi Deva, Adi Bhuta, Adi Atma, Adi Yajna. So all these various interpretations. So you will have to adopt and look at this verse with that approach, like how you will read Upanishads or Vedas. So when you look at it from a very material aspect, so there's Adi Bhuta kind of interpretation. When you look at it like that, when you look at the first verse, it means Natad Basayate Suryo. Suryo means the sun. Basayate means the rays of the sun. So in our mundane lives, how do we, daytime when the sun rises, the sun sheds light on all the material things, and once the light is shed, we are able to see it. Yeah. So there is the material sun which sheds the light, and we are able to see it. So here Vyasa is saying, that place, that liberated place, sun does not light there, and because sun does not light there, meaning that that place does not require the light of the sun for you to see. So what essentially that implies is you are looking at something that is non-material. So that is the key concept there, that liberation is a non-material platform, as it were. This samsara is a material platform. It is made up of all these rajas, tamas, and sattva gunas, and combinations of this that Krishna has spoken in great detail in the first 5 verses. So he's telling you this place of liberated place, material things are not there. So that is from an Adibhuta perspective. When you look at this, so sun does not light that place. Na shashankaha. Shashanka means moon. Chandra. So na shashankaha, the moonlight. Nighttime when there is moonlight, we can see things. But in moksha, you don't need a moonlight because it is non-material. So Chandra does not light that place. Then it says na pavakaha. Pavakaha means fire. So it says fire in our house. So this is the way it gives you an idea of how the Vedic life was. So people, they did not have torchlight and tube lights there. They either used to be dependent on the sun, or in the evening on the moon, or they will have their own fire inside the house that will provide the light for them to carry on with their lives. So Vyasa takes these 3 examples and he says, na pavakaha, even the fire cannot show because that is a non-material place. How can you use material things to understand what a non-material thing is going to be? Yeah, which is the state of liberation. So this is one layer for interpreting this verse. The next layer is Adi Deva. So when you take Adi Deva, Surya is Surya Devata. Okay, Shashanka is Chandra Devata. Pavaka is Agni. So these are all devatas of the Vedic pantheon, and they are all. We discussed it sometime about the ranks, the Vedic ranks. Starting from Vishnu and going down the Vedic ranks. If you look at our Surya, he is the 12th rank. And if you look at Chandra, he is also 12th rank, but slightly lower. And then Pavaka is 15th rank. So here Vyasa is saying, you know what? These fellows will not be able to show you that liberated place. That should give you 2 ideas. Number one, what is the role of Abhimani Devatas? What is their place in taking us to liberation? So they can guide us to some extent, but they cannot give us liberation. So when we did this few months ago about the role of the Vedic pantheon and deities, we concluded saying all the deities of the Vedic pantheon should be worshipped and celebrated as somebody who would take us towards liberation, but they will not give us liberation. Only Vishnu can give us liberation is what the overwhelming statement from the Vedas. So if you want to get liberation, please go to Krishna or Vishnu or Vyasa or whatever name you want to call him. All other Abhimaniti Devatas are his family, and they can help you, but they cannot give you that liberation. So again, that is the idea that comes out from this verse, that these Abhimani Devatas cannot show you that liberated state. Okay. So you have to go inside and find out who is it who is going to be doing. Yes, we now conclude. So it has to be somebody who is inside these Abhimani Devatas. Okay, as Antaryami, who is Vishnu, who is inside even these Abhimani Devatas and Jivas, who will take us. Now, how does that idea comes? That idea comes from Katha Upanishad, which, as we all discussed several times, Gita and Katha Upanishads are closely related. The philosophy of Katha is the philosophy of Gita. So this one, na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, na me vidyuto bhanti, kuto ayam agnihi. So that's what Yama is saying, Nachiketa, which is exactly the same as what Krishna is saying, Arjuna. Na tatra suryo bhati. Surya means Surya, Bhati means rays. Na Chandra, Tarakam means rays. Chandra means moon. Namo Vidyutaho. This is interesting. Vidyuta means lightning. And I've given you an image of that. And again, the Upanishads are taking things that they've seen in the natural world that gives us light. So lightning, when we know when it happens, it can light up the whole field. So here again, he uses the fourth one, Name Vidyuto Bhanti Kuto Ayam Agni. When even lightning can't do it, how can Agni can also not light. And in the very next verse of Katha Upanishad, that is the clue as to how to interpret this verse. That verse says, Tameva Bantam Anubhati Sarvam Tasya Basa Sarvam Idam Vibhati. So that statement is quite powerful. It says, you know what, these chaps, that is Surya, Chandra, Agni, Vidyut, these guys, they cannot light that place. In fact, you know what, they don't have any power. Their ability to give light itself is dependent on the Supreme. If the Supreme had not given them that capacity to emit light, Surya would have never emitted light, is what this is saying. And then you understand that this Supreme Person is actually inside the Surya and making Surya do what he is doing. So that is the philosophy there. So Tameva Bantam Anubhati Sarvam Tasya Basa Sarvam Idam Vibhati. Yeah. So that next word. So when you read this Gita, please link up with Upanishads and read it. Then it becomes more logical. So now again, the question is, yes, none of these can show us the supreme or his abode. Why? Because supreme and his abode is non-material. So when everything is non-material, how can material things show us, which is the adibhuta entities that we know of, show? Now similarly, you can extrapolate this. You can say deepas that you light in your puja room, candle that you light in your church, or the torch that you have in garage, or NASA's telescope, the Galilean Hubble telescope, or their infrared telescope, or the microscope. None of these things can actually show you the supreme or his abode, because that person's abode is non-material. Okay. So then the bigger question is, come on, this is contradictory. On the one hand, Veda says you should see him. On the other hand, you are saying that his abode is non-material and cannot be seen. So for example, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, I keep coming back to this again and again, when Yajnavalkya says, Atma vare drashtavyaha, shrotavyo mantavyo, nitidyasitavyaha Maitreyi. And he says, Atma should be seen. Arey, you have just told me that he is non-material. How can I see him? Prashna Upanishad is also saying the same. Sa etasmat jivaganat parat param purushayam purusham ikshate. This Purusha should see that Purusha. Ikshate means to see. Yeah. Atmanyeva Atmanam Pashyet. This Atma, Jivatma, should see that Paramatma. Pashyet means to see. So it's all pervasive in the Upanishads that you should see him, you should see him, you should see him. But then here Krishna is saying, but his abode, the sun cannot light it, Surya, Chandra cannot light it, Agni cannot light it, the lightning cannot light it. So it seems contradictory. Yeah. So now to understand this, how do you approach this? So how do I see? How on earth am I going to see the Supreme? Yeah. To understand this, I put a question mark for us to think about. So in this verse, Vyasa has said, once you cross to the liberated state, you have seen that moksha, which is non-material. But then the question is Vishnu's abode only in Shvetadipa, Anantasana and Vaikunta? Is that the only place he is there? So that is a question for us for discussion as well for the next couple of minutes. So can we have some contributions here, please? What do we think? Where is this supreme being?
Madhu, we sort of a lot of times we say, isn't it? Like, the God is within you. He's not sitting somewhere, he's just within you. So, but that is sort of still a material world, isn't it? We are a material world. This earth is a material world, and is probably, so is it that's well, that's not, I wouldn't say contradictory, but it's a sort of, he can be in a position both in a material and a non-material space.
Yeah, excellent. Sudarshan, thank you for that. Yeah, tremendous insight. Yeah, anybody else?
Mother Suresh,
Yeah.
does it mean that, I mean, you need to illuminate your luminous self to look for the God within you?
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Yes, both of you have got it spot on. Thanks to Sudarshan and Suresh. So that is what I was going to lead you. So when this verse is talking so much, then the question is, where do I have to go and see him? So here, as you know, this supreme being is not just sitting in some remote place called moksha. That is the concept of Brahma Kumaris. Brahma Kumaris view is this supreme guy sits somewhere in some far off corner of this universe, and from there he is directing the operations of the universe. That is Brahma Kumaris philosophy. They can hold on to that. We have no issues there. But our Vedas proclaim in Ishavasya Upanishad, it says Om Ishavasyam Idam Sarvam. That is the very first verse. When it says Ishavasyam Idam Sarvam. So what does that mean? Isha means supreme, Vasyam, okay, Idam Sarvam. There are two ways of looking at that word. Isha Vasyam, Isha Avasyam Idam Sarvam. So two ways we have to split it open, which means this supreme being has pervaded all his creation. So he is in the material world, he is pervaded in the material world. So when I say he is pervaded the material world, it means the Brahmanda and it also means the Pindanda. Yeah. And then when the Ishavasya Upanishad says Isha Avasyam Idam Sarva means he is also outside this material world. So that means he is also in moksha. So that is the beauty of this Upanishad, Isha Upanishad. Split, you get so many meanings. So in that very first verse, the Rishi has covered where all is this supreme being present. He is present in Brahmanda, he is present in Pindanda, and of course he is present in moksha. That we have just spent in the previous verse. So as Sudarshan mentioned, are we all going to go to that moksha place and see that supreme right now? Can we know his abode? No, we can't at this point of time. But he is so supremely graceful to us, but he actually gives us a clue and he gives us, look, you don't have to, see that you don't have to feel that you can see me only in that liberated state because I am all over the place. I am in Brahmanda, I am in Pindanda. Look at yourself in the Pindanda. Is his abode not inside us, as Sudarshan mentioned? So next question is, if so, what is his Swarupa there? What is the nature of his abode there? So this is Adi Atma interpretation of this verse. So the same thing applies here. Natad basayate suryo na shashankaha na pavakaha. Okay, so that place again, you cannot see that place with your eyes, your ears, and so on. You cannot see it with your material thing. So what does that again mean? It means in this bottom line I've saw, don't reach outside. Don't go search for him from one place to another. Don't. You can search if you want, but the ultimate answer is you have to search for him inside. So the advice there is make the inner journey. Yeah. So make the inner journey. Just Venkat, do you mind muting your audio? There is a lot of echo coming through.
Oh, I thought. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So the clue to that comes in the verse itself. It says, "Don't search outside. Search inside. Make that inner journey." Now, that is picking up an interesting discussion for today because we know, and as Sudarshan said, Jivatma is inside us. Yeah. So, yeah, and we have spoken about this before. Can somebody remind me where the Jiva is placed in our body, please?
Near the thymus.
Thank you. Well done, Sudarshan. Yes. So the Vedas give us, the Upanishads give us a lot of clue, yeah, as to where exactly this Jiva is placed. Yeah. In Taittiriya Upanishad, when we are doing Brahma Vidapnoti Param, Tesha Abhyukta Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman. Okay. So the Taittiriya Upanishad says there is a cave, there is a space inside the middle portion of your body, and that space is called Paramavyoma. Similarly, the Vaikunta also is called Paramavyoma. This place is also called Parame Vyoman. Okay. Now, Katha Upanishad again says that in that space, there are two fellows sitting there. This fellow who is called Brahman, he is Anoraniyan, Mahato Mahiyan, Natma Asya Jantor Nihito Guhayam. He is staying in that cave. Look at that word Guha. Guha means a cave. Cave means a space. Look at Dahara Vidya of Chandogya Upanishad. We have spent some time about this a few weeks ago. That's a beautiful chapter 8, which clearly tells you where this soul, where this God is present in our Pindanda. So it says Brahmapure, Daharam, Pundarikam, Vashema. So that's important, Brahmapure. And it even says this Puram, it's called Brahmapuram. This cave inside this thymus is called Brahmapuram. There, where is that Brahmapuram? It is in this organ which is of the shape of Pundarikam. Pundarikam means lotus. It's a shape of an inverted lotus flower. So that is the thymus gland. And then this Jivatma is also in that cave in the thymus along with Brahman. So that cave and where the Jivatma and Paramatma is where you need to search that fellow there who is sitting there and who is directing you to do lots of things in your life. So that supreme being who is in moksha, he is not just in moksha, he is everywhere, but more importantly for your progression, for your sadhana, you need to understand that he is inside your body, inside your thymus and inside your cave. So don't search outside, search inside. So search inside, will that still give me an answer? Because I still have my material eyes, I still have my material ears. Will it still give my answer to my field? No. And as Suresh Kankanwadi alluded to, the light that you use is not the light of the sun. It is not the light of this moon. It is not the light of Agni. It is not the light of lightning. Use the light of knowledge. Use the inner light of knowledge to see him. Of course, you need his grace for that. So that is why this Taittiriya Upanishad verse is so profound. It's, as we discussed before, we said, Om Brahmavid apnoti param, tadesha abhyukta, satyam jnanam anantam brahma, yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman. He who sees him inside, so ashnute sarvan kaman saha, means that fellow will attain whatever he wants, which means you can attain whatever you want in liberation. So that fellow, that jiva who sees this person inside through the light of knowledge will actually attain him. Yeah. So that is the profound philosophy of that. Now, in the left, I've had our famous cartoon that has appeared again. And again, our famous birds have also come back again for the slide. And this is where the thymus is, the center of the body. There is a cave. And in that cave, the Mundaka Upanishad, as we know, the Dvasuparana, Sayuja, Sakaya, Samana Vriksham, Parishashvajate. It is talking about that cave where this bird is sitting, this tree is this material body, and in that cave, two birds are sitting, this Atma and the Adhika Atma of the fourth verse, Adhyatma Nitya. Yeah, so that is Adhika Atma. So that chap is Paramatman, and this fellow is Jivatman. So this guy is called Bimba, and this Jiva is called Pratibimba. What are their natures? The supreme being is Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Okay, he is non-material, and the Vedas celebrate him as somebody who is full of consciousness, knowledge, and bliss. Yeah, a Satchit Ananda, which is nothing material about it. Everything is non-material about it. And such is the nature of the Jivas also, in a limited sense, Satchit Ananda. So this Satchit Ananda can only see the Satchit Ananda. So this Jiva with its Satchit Ananda Swarupa will have the light of knowledge and will have what is called as Aparoksha Jnana. See this fellow, the Brahman. Until that seeing happens, there is no scope for liberation. So that is what the Upanishads constantly tell us. So the light of the sun, the light of the moon, the light of Agni, the light of lightning will not show. That it is the light of knowledge that will show the supreme. That light of knowledge comes through sadhanas. Eventually you will have your self-realization, and with your self-realization and your inner knowledge, you will be able to turn around and see that inner person who is the Adhika Atma. And once you have seen, that state is called Aparoksha Jnana. Once that is done, then you will lose all your karmas, and then you will go to the state of liberation. So this is the process. So I have given you another layer there as to how that process happens. And when you look at the sixth verse, think about it. Now the sixth verse also now opens you up for a much more deeper philosophical speculation and thought process, which Vedas and Upanishads and Gita, of course, talks about it. This is this concept called Bimba and Pratibimba Bhava. Okay, the relationship between the supreme being, who is called Bimba, and the Jiva, who is called Pratibimba. What is their relationship? How do they operate? How do the souls link up with Brahman, and how does Brahman influence the soul? So Vedavyasa, by actually he's introducing this concept in verse 6. Initially, he's asking you to look at Brahmanda, and then he's reminding you to go into your Pindanda and have a search for this fellow, this Brahman, because the very next verse will deal with this. Yeah. So again, here I've taken this Jayatirtha's verse that we have done before on the right, and here I put, unless we see him, we cannot obtain his grace. This is called Bimba Sakshatkara. So that Bimba Sakshatkara can happen only with the knowledge. The light of knowledge is the only solution for that. So moving on to the next slide, immediately, so that is again, as I said, every verse of the Gita should take us naturally to the next verse. And sometimes I see some books where concepts are discussed with no relationship. There is no discussion as to how the sixth verse goes to the seventh verse. Yeah, this seventh verse, for example, Mamaivaamsho Jivaloke Jivabhutah Sanatana Manaha Shashtani Indriyani Prakritistani Karishyati. In the previous verse, he's talking about natat suryo bhati, natat basayate suryo, na shashankaha, na agnihi. He has told that this is not happening. He's talking about, if you just take it as something that talks about Brahmanda, this verse will just be totally, appearing out of context. That is how it will appear, unless you are able to draw that concept into the Pindanda, into the cave, into the Jiva and Paramatma, and then understand what is that light that Vedavyasa is talking about, the light of knowledge by which Jiva can see Brahman, and that this Jiva and Paramatma is inside the heart's cave. Unless we understand and accept and appreciate that concept, the seventh verse will be completely out of place. Because what is it saying? It is saying, Mamaivamsho Jivaloke Jivabhutaha Sanatanaha Manaha Shashtani Indriyani Prakritistani Karishyati. We'll just take the first line and see what it means. Now, before you go to the first line, we need to understand what is this Amsha and Amshi business, because there's a lot of confusion. And I've also had folks send emails to discuss about Amsa and Amsi. What is Amsa? What is Ansh? What is Amsi? Yeah, what does it actually mean? So let's spend a few minutes to understand this, because unless you get the concept right, it's very difficult to understand verse 8 and verse 9, for example. And also to understand the second line of verse 7 itself becomes a little bit difficult. Yeah. So what is Amsha? Amsha literally means part. Amsi means that which has parts is an Amsi. So, for example, if you take my body is Amsi. My hand, my legs are all Amsas. They're all part of this body. Okay, so that is one way of looking at it. Hands is an Amsha of this body. And because I have Amsa, I am called Amsi. Now, the Vedas and the Upanishads actually go into this problem much more deeply to describe what is. So, does God, for example, have his own parts? Does he have a head? Does he have a hand? Does he have legs? So if it is there, what is the difference between his hand and his eyes? What is the difference between his hands and his legs? So that is also becomes a philosophical problem. Now, for me as a material body, it's fine. My hand is, if I cut my hand is gone. So that part is gone. Yeah. So, but for the Supreme, how does it behave? For Jiva Swarupa, how does it behave? So these have all been taught about in our philosophies. So what our philosophies describe is there are two types of amshas, parts. It's called Swa Amsha, Vibhinna Amsha. Swa Amsha means Swarupa Amsha, And vibhinna amsha means something that is different from my essential being. So if you take me, I am a jiva inside the thymus. Okay, that is me. My bhinna amsha is this body. Okay, because it is a different part. It is not directly related to me. Okay, Swarupa Amsa is, for example, my Jiva, me as a Jiva, I might have eyes, I might have hands and so on in the Jiva itself. That is my Swarupa Amsa, which is inseparable from me. Yeah, we need to think about this concept a bit more. So when it comes to God, for example, there is a concept called Swarupa Amsas. That is, Swarupa Amsas means, and again, we have done this before, God has, you have, of course, Vishnu Narayana. Then there are various forms of the Lord. You have Vyuha forms, you have Avataras, you have Amsas, you have Avesha, and you have Vibhutis. These are all the various forms of the Lord. Yeah. So these forms of the Lord are called Swarupa Amsas. Okay. So those Swarupa Amsas are non-different from each other. So this is the first thing that you need to understand. So when here Mama Eva Amsha, so that means, so this Paramatman, remember we are talking about this Guha, and we are talking about this Guha, there are two fellows sitting inside the Guha in this Pindanda. And let us take the Bimbarupa, who is the Paramatma who is sitting inside you. Veda Vyasa is saying, Mama Eva Amshaha. That means this form of me that is inside you is a Swarupa Amsa, which means it is non-different from the Supreme Vishnu who is there in Vaikuntha, or his Vyuha forms, Narayana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, or Avatara forms, all the various avatars that you know of. Amshas. Amsha is an interesting one. There are various views on this. Some would talk about, Balarama, for example, is an Amsha in certain schools. In certain schools, is an Avatara. That is not for us to debate. But the key there is they essentially represent the same form of the Lord. Avesha. So that is, sorry, Avesha is for Balarama. Yeah. Vibhuti, the whole of chapter, Gita chapter, Vibhuti Yoga celebrates this, the special presence of the Supreme in certain jivas. Yeah, so that is called Vibhuti, and Krishna describes this in detail. Then you have Brahman, you have Paramatma, you have Bhagavan, all these various names. They all seem confusing, but essentially they are Swarupa Amsas. And then he says, look, there are infinite jivas, and in infinite jivas, I am there. And my Swarupa Amsa is there. Whatever is there in all these infinite jivas is the same Swarupa that is also there in Vaikuntha. So that is one interpretation of Mama Eva Amshaha. Okay. But then there is another one called Binna Amsha. Binna Amsha means separated part, eternally separated part. Okay. So that eternally separate part. I wouldn't say separated. That means that somehow it has broken away from Brahman. That is not the interpretation. Eternally separate part. Okay, so that is called Jivatman, which is also an Amsha, and that Amsha is Binna Amsha. So when I say Mamaeva Amshaha Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhutaha Sanatanaha, then that means, these Jivas, they are also my Amsha, but they are Binna Amsha of me who are inside this cave. Okay. Jiva Loka means interesting. Loka means the place. Where is the place where the Jiva resides? It is this body. So the Jiva Loka means this body. Okay. Now Jiva Bhutaha means it is the Jivas. Jiva, Bhuta means that which has Unnati. So Bhutas means all sentient beings are called Bhutas. So Jiva Bhutaha is inside the Jiva Loka. And what is the nature of the Jiva Bhuta? He says Sanatanaha. Sanatanaha means eternal. Or they're Anadi Nitya, which means there was never a time when the Jivas were born. There will never be a time. There will not be. And we all know this chapter 2, 12th verse. So whilst I take a minute break, can somebody volunteer and recite the 12th verse again, please?
Okay, Madhu, I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Nattvevaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadhipa न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम्.
Thank you, Nita. So this verse, Jiva Bhutaha Sanatanaha, should remind you of the 12th verse of chapter 2 because it is directly linked with that verse. When Vyasa says Jiva Bhutaha Sanatanaha means Jivas are eternal, you should remind yourself of the 12th verse, which is the very first verse of the philosophical verse of the Gita, where he has also established the same thing. So when he says Mamaeva Amshaha Jiva Loke Jiva Bhutaha Sanatanaha, you look at it in two aspects. One aspect here is that the Swarupa Amsa of Brahman is there in all these caves, in all the jivas, and the eternal separate jivas are also there in all these caves. So it is this combination, the Swarupa Amsa of the law and the Binna Amsa of Jiva, together they are going through, or they are there in that cave. Yeah, and they have this relationship called Bimba Pratibimba Bhava, which means whatever the object does, the reflected image does, which means there is that relationship of eternal dependence. And we have dealt with this concept before, so please go back to the previous slides, previous sessions to understand this eternal relationship of the dependence of Pratibimba or the jivas to the Bimba or the Supreme Lord is described as Bimba Pratibimba Bhava in Rig Veda and in other Vedas. I think I had a slide in the previous session, the previous slide. In Rig Veda, as you know, Rupam Rupam Pratirupo Babavaha Tatasya Rupam Pratijakshanaya. And even Katha Upanishad also talks about it. In fact, Tameva Bantam Anubhati Sarvam Tasya Basa Sarvamidam Bhati, it says, and after that it comes to that verse in Katha Upanishad, and I think I've got it in the next slide, or I might have forgotten to put it. So, but anyway, Katha Upanishad also talks about Rupam Rupam Pratirupo Babhuvaha, talks about this Bimba and Pratibimba. So to understand 7th verse, you should go back to 6th verse and see that how that Pindanda concept comes. As soon as the Pindanda concept comes, he brings in this, there are two fellows, Bimba and Pratibimba. And then he asks, so they are inside this Pindanda, what are they doing inside the body? What is the Swarupa of the Supreme that we understand? So, reminding you again, this chapter is about celebrating the Purusha. It is about celebrating the greatness of the Supreme. So, every verse of this chapter needs to be linked to the greatness of the Supreme. We should not talk irrelevant things such as talk about Jiva and how the Jiva is going through samsara and so on. That may be true, but that is not the aim of Purushottama Yoga. Purusha Uttama Yoga. It is for us to understand what the Supreme Being is doing. So the first thing that you have understood from the 7th verse is there is the Swarupa Amsa of Brahman, which is there in all jivas, and that the nature of Swarupa Amsa is no different from Mula Rupa, from Avatara Rupa, from Vyuha, Amsa, Avesha, and Vibhuti Rupas. There is no iota of difference. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate is the declaration of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And what is it saying? It says that the Mula Rupa of Supreme is infinite, Avatara Rupa of Supreme is infinite, every Rupa of the Supreme is infinite. Okay. Katha Upanishad, it gives you we have done this thingy called Nehananasti Kinchana. Yeah, the famous Nehananasti Kinchana of Katha Upanishad. And if you look at the contextual relevance of where it comes and what it is actually topping, it clearly states there, we don't have time to go through this, we've dealt with this in a previous section. The details, the essential theme of Nehananasti Kinchana is, he who thinks that the Supreme Lord's nature in the Mula Rupa is different from his Avatara Rupa or from his Bimba Rupa in the Jivatman, he who thinks that they are different will go to the deepest of hells. That is the proclamation of Yama to Nachiketa. And how does he fall? He says, Yata Udakam Durge Vrushtam Parvateshu Vitavati. Like how from the mountain the water falls down, like that he will fall down. He who thinks that the nature of the Supreme his forms in various stations are different. That is the meaning of Neha Nanasti Kinchana. It has nothing to do with monism. It is to talk about the celebration of the greatness of the Brahma Swarupa of Katha Upanishad. So those two Upanishads should also come to our mind when we talk about this. So now moving on to the next line. So
This Sudarshan, just a small thing, when he says, Yama says, if you have, if you think like that, you'll go to hell. Is it like a metaphor to say, like, that means you not had an understanding of all these things, so you have to start at a very low ignorant level? Is that what he says?
Yeah, so I think Sudarshan, yeah, thank you, Sudarshan, for that. So the interpretation there is, one is you will go to hell's means there are different views on that. Certain schools think that if there is a moksha, which is a place of eternal bliss, there must also be a place of eternal suffering. Yeah, so there are certain schools that view that actually deep hells actually exist, andatamas as it's called. So some schools believe that andatamas actually exist. So he who thinks that God's forms are different, Yama will, if you take that view, he actually is giving us a warning. If you think like that, you will actually go down, man. Don't do that. So that is almost like warning. But you're also right in the sense that he who thinks like that will fall down, means that he has inferior knowledge and that he is in ignorance. So he needs to get that right knowledge and rise up. So you could view at it in both ways, Sudarshan. Yeah, so can we just move on? So when she says, Mamaivamsho Jivaloke Jivabhutaha Sanatanaha, then the very next line he says, Manaha Shashtani Indriyani Prakritistani Karishati. So all these things will make sense only when you move from Brahmanda to Pindanda to the cave, and in the cave you have the Paramatma and the Jivatma, and they both are having some transactions between each other, and there is some transaction that is happening with the external world. So we need to understand this. So there is a bit of a background shastra or philosophy that needs to be grasped before you understand what this particular verse actually is. There is a verse there called Karshati. Okay, Karshati there means Karsha. Karsha means attraction, to pull, to grab. Karsha, Akarshana, Sankarshana, Krishna, they're all something to attract, something to grab, something to pull. So they all mean similar things, Karishati. Okay, so the Karishati means what? So if you look at the Jiva, so I've got a figure here in the top corners. You have a Jiva. Now, all Jivas, so think about this. We can discuss this in the subsequent weeks if you have some issues with it. All Jivas always have material covering. Okay, unless they are in liberation. Yeah, so if you look at a situation where in pralaya you are all of us are in that Brahman's belly, and then pralaya has finished and the srishti has started. So when that srishti time, what is happening? So the creation for the jiva means jivas are given gross bodies. That is their creation. So that we have discussed. Does that mean in pralaya state also jivas do not have any material body at all? No, that is not the view. The view is jivas always have a material covering. That is called linga sharira. It is the subtlest of the material covering that jivas always have, unless they are in moksha. So in moksha, what will happen is they go through this. There is a purging that happens in a river called Viraja Nadi, which is very interesting. And when they have that cleansing in the Viraja Nadi, the linga sharira is shed, and then they go to liberation with their pristine jiva swarupa. That is liberation in the Vedic philosophy. So linga sharira is always there with jiva. Yeah, always. So that is something that to think about. Yeah. Now, when jivas then come into creation, they acquire various gross bodies like human beings, cats, dogs, rat, whatever. So that is called stula sharira. So when the stula sharira is linked up with the jiva, and in between there is a linga sharira, you call this as a human body. Okay. Now, so in this equation, linga sharira is prakritistani. It is made of matter. Now, the linga sharira then acquires this gross body. The gross body is also prakritistani, also made of matter. Now, what does the stula sharira do? It has all these indriyas. Okay, it has all these aspects by which it can interact with the external world. So Krishna here is giving us 6, for example. He has taken the 5 jnana indriyas and he has included manas. So Shashta means 6. Manaha, Shashtani Indriyani means when you add manas to Pancha Indriyas, then it becomes 6. So Manaha, Shashtani Indriyani. All these fellows are all made of matter. Okay. Now, what are these things doing? These things, these material things, are constantly grabbing and attracting the external world. That is the objects of the external world. There is always that attraction, that karshana that is going on. Okay. So that sequence of events happens at gross level and also happens at subtle level. Now, this is a new concept that I want to introduce. Think about it. Indriyas. So your jnana indriyas, your eyes, ears, your taste, your nose, and everything else. Is this only in the body or is it in the linga sharira? Is it only in the stula sharira or is it in the linga sharira? Okay, so that is a concept that you need to start thinking about unless you have some contributions already. So you're very welcome to throw in your ideas here. These indriyas, are there only in the gross body or even the subtle body has indriyas or not? What do we think here?
I think maybe they will have a subtle indriyas in the subtle
The
body.
perceptions will be there, isn't it? Indriya perceptions.
Yeah. Thank you, Shilaji. Yes. Manjunath.
Madhu, unless you are introducing a new concept, up till now, what you have said in creation, the indriyas are in the gross body, not the subtle body.
Okay. So here
Unless
is,
you're changing something now.
I'm not changing anything here. I'm going to add another layer to think about as we go around. Sorry, is there anybody else who wanted to nip in?
Yes, Sushrutya, the jiva also has to have its own indriyas to be able to enjoy things in Swargaloka for a time being before coming back and ultimately in moksha. So there are two different types of indriyas.
Okay, good stuff. So, sir, but Swargaloka is also Swarga, that is the abode of Indra and others, is also a material world. So that is also a material world. So in the material world, if these jivas who go and enjoy, how are they able to enjoy? So you're right, in moksha also they have to enjoy. So the concept of indriyas, it's quite a deep-rooted concept in philosophy. Thanks, Shushrut, for giving me that clue there. Because in Vedic philosophies, indriyas are classified into two types. There is something called the eternal indriya, and there is another one called the non-eternal indriya. So Deval, here is where the new concept is about indriyas. Non-eternal indriyas and eternal indriyas. So eternal indriyas means the jiva, the pristine jiva, the guy who is in yellow color here, he has eternal indriyas that are non-different from him. Similarly, the Supreme Brahman has got eternal indriyas that are non-different from him. Supreme Brahman's eyes can hear. Yeah, so he also has indriyas, but these are called non-material eternal indriyas. And similarly, jiva also has got eternal non-material indriyas. And the jiva fellow, when he comes into samsara, he has a subtle material covering called linga sharira, which is always with him, and that link has been brought and hold tight by Lakshmi through those three Sri Bhu Durga forms. Yeah. And then the Stula Sharira is there. So the Stula Sharira also has indriyas. These are non-eternal indriyas. And the Vedic view is the Stula Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira, that is the Linga Sharira, also has indriyas. And Shushrut, that is why when somebody has done some good deeds, and they shed this gross body, Vedas say that they go to Swargaloka, spend so many years, and then they enjoy all the things in Swargaloka, and again they come down to Mrityuloka. When they go to Swargaloka, they do not have Stula Sharira. They do not have gross body at all. They go to Swargaloka in their Sukshma Sharira, which is their Linga Sharira, and they have Bhoga and they enjoy there. How? Because the Linga Sharira also has got Indriyas. Okay. So now coming back to this figure,
Madhu, I just wanted to, because maybe easier to discuss now. You said about the sushma sort of, like the parts of the thing. Is it anything to do with the phantom pain?
Well, you may be right, Sudarshan. It is probably right. You may not have a gross body, but still you're perceiving that that pain is there in somebody who's got their leg that has been amputated. It's feasible. It's feasible. That's a very interesting point. So so Indriyas are there in many places.
Madhu, you need to tell people
Sorry,
about
Sudarshan.
phantom pain, because others, maybe non-medical people, just explain.
Yeah, go on, Sudarshan. You do it, Sudarshan. You.
Okay. No, phantom pain is a condition. It's a neurological condition where if a person's limb is amputated, like hands or legs, it's amputated, but they still get a pain in that area where the leg or the hands would have been. So that is called phantom pain, and that is a very known condition with the neurologist. If you are a neurologist, and then it is really actually very painful, and people take medications for that, and so it's a very sort of very intriguing one with this sort of scientist about how this happens. And so my question was, the question I raised to Madhu was whether there is like a sushma parts to our thing. Is that why the sort of phantom pain is there? But that's more a thought only. So let's probably I'll ask Madhu to move on. So it's just a more a thought.
Yeah, so I think what you've said is very relevant, Sudarshan, because the Vedic view of Indriyas, this you need to think about it. And again, this is greatness about our rishis as to how they viewed Indriyas and how jivas interact with the external world. And the Vedic rishis have told us that Indriyas that you see, that is my eyes, my nose, my mouth, my ear, tongue, whatever, it is just a magnifying glass. Yeah, so and I've got those two examples. Our rishis give two examples. Yeah, one example is these indriyas that is there in the gross body, they are like the magnifying glasses, and the real indriyas, the material indriyas, are on the linga sharira. They have their indriyas, and they use the gross eyes and gross eyes as magnifying glasses to look at the external world. And how does this linga sharira interact with the stula sharira? One example is how NASA controls the satellites with the press of a button. So your Hubble telescope is able to go into deep space and see something because some fellow is able to press the button, and then somehow the satellite moves through remote control and happens. It's a similar kind of concept. So that the indriyas are also there in linga sharira, and the gross body indriyas are the magnifying glasses, and then you start seeing the external world. Hold on to that concept, because unless you accept this concept, the 8th verse of Bhagavad Gita will not make any sense whatsoever. Yeah. So now coming back
Madhu,
to this.
can I ask a question? Does
Yeah,
Linga
please.
Sharira mean subtle body then?
Correct. Yes. Subtle body.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So now coming back to this cycle that I've got here. So you have mind, stula sharira, the mind body interacts with the external world. Then the body one day drops. So then again this jiva has this linga sharira, and then again it like get another body. So and again the cycle goes on in samsara. So if you look at this at every point, it's all prakriti, prakristani, and what is it? Karshati. These indriyas are constantly pulling towards objects and so on. And that is what happened around the pralaya stage when you came into being, and that is what is going on here. Now the question here is, can the jivas do all this by themselves? Do the jivas can actually make sure that the linga sharira is working properly under the linga sharira indriyas through the magnifying glass called the stula sharira indriyas attract towards the material object? Are they in full control with regards to how their indriyas are working? Yeah, that is the next question, which should lead us on to the 8th verse, because we have done this. Kena Upanishad, Keneshitam patati preshitam manaha, Kena pranaha pratamaha praiti yuktaha, Keneshitam vacham imam vadanti, Chakshuhu shrotram kavudevo inokti. Shiva is asking Chaturmukha, please explain to me how these indriyas are working. Are they working because they are there themselves, or somebody else is making them to work? When Shiva is asking that question, he is not only asking these gross indriyas, but also the abhimani devatas there. Keneshitam preshitam manaha. Manaha, Shiva is the abhimani devata of manaha. Pranaha, Mukhya Vayu, Pravaha Vayu is the abhimani devata of that. Keneshitam Vacham. Vacham is Lord Saraswati, Bharati, Agni. There are so many devatas. Chakshu is Surya, Shrotram is Chandra. So Shiva is asking, how does the gross indriyas work? How do the Abhimani devatas, how are they working? Do they work independently? And Chaturmukha is giving him the answer. Shrotrasya Shrotram, Manasa Mano, Yad Vachoha Vacham, Savu Pranasya Pranaha. So he says, no, mate, they do not work themselves. There is this fellow who is inside them, the Bimbarupa Paramatma who is inside them, who is actually making them work, making them do all this. So we should take our inspiration from Keno Upanishad. The reason being, the 8th verse of Bhagavad Gita is the essence of Talavakara Upanishad or Keno Upanishad. If you know the 8th verse properly, then if you go to the Keno Upanishad, you will be able to appreciate this, because Krishna then explains in the next verse. Yes, you have now said that this jiva has got all these coverings and it is interacting with the word. So manaha shashtani indriyani prakrtistani karishyati. How does it happen? Remember, this is Purushottama Yoga. We are in the business of knowing what is the role of the Supreme Purusha in this chapter, not just Jiva. Jiva is just a sidekick. We are talking about the Supreme Purusha, how he is making the Jivas actually operate. So the Keno Upanishad is saying this fellow, Brahman, the independent Vishnu, who is making all these operate. How does it all happen? He goes to the next verse, which is a beautiful verse. He says, Shariram yad avapnoti yacha yat utkramati ishvaraha gruhitva etani samyati vayur gandhaniva ashayat. Okay, that word vayur gandhan iva ashayat, it is split in so many ways. One way is vayur gandhani iva ashayat, or vayur gandhani vashayat. So you can break it open, which will give you different meanings. I'm not sure whether we'll have time to go into that niceties today, but I want to pick up this word Ishwaraha first. Okay, because without understanding what that Ishwaraha is, you cannot understand verse 8. And I have seen some commentaries that have actually messed it up big time, and I was surprised to see it, that some commentaries can do this fundamental mistake. So let us look at Ishwaraha. So look at the first line. Shariram yad avapnoti yacha api utkramati Ishwaraha. Yeah. So I put a question. Who is this Ishwaraha? And can I have some contributions, please?
Madhu, in the ISKCON Gita as it is, they describe in this verse, they describe the Ishvara as the Jiva.
Okay. So what is your view, Deval? What is Ishwaraha?
I mean, Ish is supreme, isn't it?
Yeah.
The word
Right.
Ish means that who doesn't have anybody above them.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Any other views here? Okay, so I'll take it up. So to find answer to this verse, Ishwaraha, for this, I think the clue there is we should always take refuge in our Vedas and in our Upanishads. To find an answer to a question, our refuge there should be the Vedas and Upanishads, period. There is no other refuge that is available to us to understand what that word Ishwaraha means. So let me take a few examples here and to tell you what it is. Let's not go too far away. We have dealt with Mundaka Upanishad hundreds of times. So what is the second verse? Samane vrikshe purusho nimagnaha anishaya shochati mukhyamanaha jushtam yada pashyati anyam isham asya mahimanam iti vitasokaha. Vitashokaha. So I've underlined that. First line, Samane Vrikshe Purusho Nimagnaha. This fellow here, he is in the same tree, but he is Nimagnaha. He doesn't know what he do. Why? Because he's Anishaha. The word is very clear. Anishaya Shochati Mukhyamanaha. Shochati, it's suffering because it is not able to control what is happening to it. It doesn't have control and lordship over what is happening to it in samsara. So Mundaka Upanishad says Anishaya to the Jiva. And then it says, when these Anishaya Jiva fellow, Jushtam Yada Pashyati Anyam Isham. Anyam means the other one. The other one, what does the Upanishad says? As Isham. So this fellow is the controller. When this bird realizes that this fellow is the controller, that is how the Upanishad goes, Mundaka Upanishad. So from that we get a clue. Anisha there is Jiva, Isha is the supreme being. Go to Purusha Shukta. Okay, Uta Amrutatvasya Ishanaha. Okay, Yad Annena Atirohati. We have done this very beautiful verse. Uta Amrutatvasya Ishanaha. Amruta means moksha. Ishanaha means he is the controller of all things, even in moksha, let alone all things in the material world. Is the philosophy of that verse. Yad Annena Atirohati. Yeah. So Ishanaha there is the supreme being who is controlling everything, not only in moksha but here also. So there also in Purusha Shukta, Ishanaha is Purusha. Look at our Vishnu Sahasranama, 8th verse. It starts Ishanaha. Yeah, is also Vishnu Sahasranama. In Vishnu Sahasranama celebrates Vishnu as Ishanaha. Ishanaha, Ishwaraha are all the same. Why? Shankaracharya, when he writes his Bhashya on Ishwaraha, that is his definition of Ishwaraha. Ishwaraha, Ishana Shilaha, Narayana iti Artaha. This is Shankara Bhashya, which is beautiful because many of our acharyas, they will have, different views of, their philosophies. And, when you see this verse, you understand the democracy of philosophy, because this particular interpretation of Shankaracharya resonates with all other acharyas who also view Ishwaraha, Ishana Shilaha, Narayana iti Artaha. Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya will have no issues with this interpretation because it's such a beautiful interpretation that actually gives the etymology of what Ishwaraha is. Ishwaraha means Ishana Shilaha, and who is that Ishana Shilaha? Narayana iti Artaha. So that is first thing that I want to impress upon you when you look at the 8th verse, who that Ishwaraha is. Ishwaraha cannot be Jiva because Jiva is not a controller of anything. He is not. He may assume he is a controller, but he actually is not a controller, is the fundamental truth of Vedic philosophy. And there are empty number of Vedic Upanishad evidences to show that this Ishwaraha is Narayanaha. Okay. Now, why is this important? Again, I come back to the same point. Chapter 15 is Purushottama Yoga. It is the celebration of the Purusha. It is the celebration of the Supreme Being. Jiva is a sidekick. He is a peripheral issue for chapter 15. Our focus is how can we read chapter 15 as it celebrates the Supreme. So when you take it with that spirit, what is it this verse says? Shariram yad avapnoti yacha api utkramati ishwaraha. Okay, so hold on to that. For now, assume Ishwaraha is Narayanaha or Vishnu. So what does it say? Shariram is body, yad avapnoti. Okay, so avapnoti is an interesting word. So what is avapnoti? You split it, ava plus apnoti. Apnoti means attains, gets. Yeah, apnoti. Ava is a abbreviation of at least two words, avara and avak. Okay, now the Supreme Lord takes avatara. So what does avatara mean? So what does avatara literally mean? Can I have some contribution there, please? Sudarshan.
Physical form, taking a physical form.
Incarnation of God, the avatar.
Avatar.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So ava means come down. Yeah.
Okay.
So the literal meaning of ava means come down. So when I say avatara, what it means is the Supreme Being comes down to this world in various forms. So that is what I get avatara. Okay. So ava means to come down, which is avara means to come down, is below. come down. Avak means come down. Yeah. So ava, so comes down, and apnoti means attains, takes up. Okay. So what comes down and takes up a body? There are two ways of looking at it. Jiva, of course, comes down and takes a body. That is how it goes through Mrityu Loka. Okay. But the Jiva does not come alone. The Jiva comes because the supreme fellow, the supreme Brahman, is actually pulling it. Wherever the supreme Brahman goes, Jiva has to go with him. Because as we have discussed, there are two fellows, Dvasuparana, Sayuja, Sakaya. There are two fellows that are always there. They are in that eternal relationship. They cannot get rid of each other. Brahman could, but Jiva, no way he can get rid of Brahman. Okay, and remember, this Brahman controls the Jiva. So when this verse says, Ava apnoti shariram yad ava apnoti. Okay. Then it says the other thing, yat cha api utkramati. So utkramati means what? Uttara or utta, kramati. Kramati means goes. Utta means uttama, uttara, which means up. Okay. So in one word says ava apnoti means it comes down. Utkramati means it goes up. Okay. So what comes down and goes up in Mrityu Loka? Okay. That is, the Jiva comes down. Correct. The Jiva comes down and goes up. But watch the next verse. So that is why you need to read the context. It says, Ishwaraha yetani gruhitva samyati. Okay, so if you watch that verse there, so it says etani means all this. All this means what? Jiva, along with its linga sharira, along with all the indriyas, which is all these six, manaha and all the five indriyas that is there in the linga sharira, and the jiva, the Ishvara brings it down during when they want to be in samsara, and he takes them above. Ishvaraha, etani means all this. Gruhitva, he gathers them and goes. Samyati, he goes. Ishvaraha, etani gruhitva samyati. So when Vedavyasa says that, and this chapter is about this celebration of the Supreme, what again it tells you is, yes, Jiva is a sidekick. Jiva comes down, spends time in Mrityu Loka, and then he goes up. But he has not decided. Have we decided to come down to this place? Can we decide when we have to go up? This is where your clue is as to what this verse is saying, because we have not decided how we have come down, and we are now going to decide when we are going to go back up wherever and then come back again, because it is not in our control. If only it was in my control, I would, for example, today I would have decided I should be born somewhere in a remote mountain, but I can't do it. Yeah, so that one is very clear. Ishwaraha gruhitva etani samyati. How does he do? This is how it's interesting, and it gives a, so how does this Ishwaraha does it? How does he Ishwaraha, when he decides he has to leave the body, Jivas have got no choice. Jivas along with Mukhya Prana have to leave the body. Yeah, that is how it is. Whether we like it or not, that is how the situation is. When God decides, I'm going to bring somebody here, we come in. When God decides this fellow's innings is over, he needs to go somewhere else, it happens. How does that happen? And Vyasa Krishna gives a beautiful symbolism, talks about Vayur Gandhaniva Ashayat. Okay, so what does that mean? So this is beautiful symbolism, and how the Supreme takes the jivas along with Linga Sharira and their Indriyas is as how when there is a rose in the garden and you are standing a few meters away from the rose and the wind blows. When the wind blows, what happens? The fragrance of the rose, it goes and you're able to smell it. You can't see it, but it is so subtle that you can smell that fragrance, because those atoms, those fragrant atoms from the rose is being blown by the wind. Okay. Similarly, Vayur Ashayat Gandhaniva. So similarly, the supreme being who is called Ishwaraha Gruhitva Etani, Jiva and their Linga Shariras and their minds, and he takes them. How? Like Vayur Ashayat Gandhaniva. Now again, the reason why I'm taking you in this angle is, Again, all the evidence for this, we should only go to our Upanishads and our Vedas, and what do they say? There is a beautiful verse in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is, which is a direct relevance to this verse. Okay, so this verse is very nice. It says, Tadyata anaha susumadi mrityu. So let's forget that verse, lack of time. So essentially, the meaning of that verse is, and again, our Vedic Rishi is taking how it used to be in those agrarian societies. You have a bullock cart, and there is a fellow who is driving, and he is moving from village to village. Okay, so this rishi, this rishi is taking this village, each village as a body, and then he says, this cart is the jiva, and the jiva is driven. This cart, which is called the jiva, is driven by this Vishnu. So what does this bullock cart do? This Vishnu fellow, he goes from one village to another village. So this jiva acquires one body, spend some time in that village. Once it's got bored in that village, then it packs up and then it goes to another village and goes to another body. So that is exactly how the symbolism of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is, which is directly relevant to what it says is here. Ishvaraha gruhitva etani samyati vayur gandhaniva ashayat. So direct relevance to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So from there, you will now be able to appreciate what Vyasa is actually telling is this Ishvaraha is Vishnu. Okay, and this Vishnu drives this bullock cart from one body to another. Based on all the karmas and everything else this jiva does, he takes them. So that is the essence of Vayur Gandhaniva Ashayat. Another reference also given in this particular verse is from Chandogya Upanishad, and we have done this before. Purusham Somya Upatapinam Nyatva Pariupasate Jnanasimam Janasimam Mamiti Tasya Yavanna Vang Manasi Sampadhyate Manaha Prane. It goes on. So basically, what it is there is a sick fellow in the bed. And then this sick fellow is, and then there are all these relatives around him. And the relatives ask this sick person, can you see me? Can you hear me? I am your uncle. I am your grandfather. I am your so person who has come to see you. So this sick person is able to appreciate as long as the mind is not merged. And it goes on, it gives you a sequence. So what it says, Vang Manasi Sampadhyate Manaha Prane Prane Tejasi Tejase Parasyam Devatam. Parasyam Devatam is a supreme being. So essentially it's saying, as long as these things are not merged, and as long as this Parasya Devatam has not left the body, everything will work, and the sick person will be able to say, yes, I can see you. But the moment Parasyam Devatam has decided that I am going to leave this body, the jiva has no other business but to leave, and along with him goes everybody else, all the indriyas, manaha, vak, and everybody else also have to go along with him. So that is another reference in Chandogya Upanishad. So if you think about Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya Upanishad, they give you a clue, not just clue, a compelling evidence who that Ishvaraha is, what is that Ishvaraha doing, and how he helps the souls go through their careers from one body to another. Again, I come back to it. Purushottama Yoga is about celebrating the Supreme. And finally, I want to finish off saying this particular verse, Shariram yad apnoti yachayati utkramati ishvaraha gruhitva etani samyati vayur gandhani va ashaya. This one verse essentially is a summary of the whole of Keno Upanishad. If you have time, read through the Keno Upanishad. It is a brilliant philosophical discourse between Rudra and Chaturmukha Brahma talking about the Supreme. We have already done with the very first verse, Kene Shitam Patati, then it says Shrotra Se Shrotam. Now all these Indriyas work because the Supreme Being is there. Now the next few verses is directly related to this 8th verse. So it says, Yad Vacha Anabhyutitam Yena Vak Abhyutyate Tadeva Brahma Tvam Viddi Na Idam Yadidam Upasate. Yen Manasa Na Manute Yena Ahur Manomatam Tadeva Brahma Tvam Viddi Na Idam Yadidam Upasate. Yet Chakshusha Na Pashyati Yena Chakshum Shipachyati Tadeva Brahma Tvam Viddi Na Idam Yadidam Upasate. Yet Shrotrena Na Shrunoti Yena Shrotram Idam Shrutam Tadeva Brahma Tvam Viddi Na Idam Yadidam Upasate Yat Pranena Na Pranati Yena Pranaha Praniyate Tadeva Brahma Tam Viddi Na Idam Yadidam Upasate is the declaration of Kena Upanishad. Essentially, what it's saying is Yad Vacha Anabhyubitam. By speech, you cannot grasp him fully. By yen manasa na manute. Similarly, with mind, you cannot grasp him fully. Yet chakshusha na pashyati. With your eyes, you cannot see him fully. Yet shrotrena na shrunoti. With your eyes, you can't hear him. So it goes on and says, you can't hear him, but he is inside you. But you have to use the same indriyas to know about him. And so on it goes. The Upanishad then progresses to discuss deeper philosophy. So the essence of verse 8 is that this supreme being, although we think the jivas come down, do the samsara, and they go up, and so on and so forth, the chapter 8's philosophy there is that is a side business. Yes, jivas do that. Nobody is having a problem with that. Yes, jivas are interacting with matter. Yes, jivas are going through samsara. Yes, jivas are attracted to indriyas and so on. But please do remember, jivas are dependent being. It is the supreme that controls them in every journey and in every aspect of their direction, exactly like that bullet card. So the essence there is the jiva thinks it is enjoying indriya's contact with the external world. The Ajit, do you want to mute your audio, please? We can hear you. So, so the jiva essentially thinks that it is enjoying indriya's contact with the external world, but actually, what does the supreme do? So when you understand the natural progression of verses 6, 7, and 8, the next verses then become really interesting, because it tells you what does the supreme do in this, what does his transaction, and what is the jiva's transactions with regards to how he interacts with the external world and so on. So that we will deal with it in subsequent classes. So I'm quite pleased that I did 3 verses today. It was a whistle stop tour, but I hope that you are able to grasp the essential philosophy of the Upanishads and the Vedas and how they are directly related with Gita, because Gita also is an Upanishad. So if we are not sure about something in the Gita, our refuge should be to go to the Upanishads and the Vedas, but not make up our own stories. So our refuge is always Vedas and Upanishads, and I'll stop there. Krishna Pranamastu, and we'll have any questions you may have.
Thank you, Madhu, for the lovely lecture. I have to say, we have another like a puja arranged today at 6 o'clock, so we need to finish all the discussions before that. But hopefully, we'll do that. Madhu, I'll start with my question. Many a times we say like our mind is very powerful, yeah. So that is the basis of a lot of our rituals as well. But you sort of even said that the jiva in itself is not very powerful, like because it's ultimately the supreme is powerful. While we all know that, so when we actually say the mind is powerful, jiva is also powerful, should we take it at in the context of the supreme supporting them? Yeah, not they're not powerful in themselves. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, Sudarshan. Yeah, in the subsequent verses, there is a concept of Sarva Antaryamiyatva that comes in, where the Supreme is the Antaryami of every sentient being that is there. So now, when you said Jiva and mind, so there are 2 things. One is the Jiva. So Jiva's Antaryami is your Bibarupa Paramatma, who is inside and controlling it. And when you look at Manas, Manas is a material Manas, you feel you're controlling it, but actually not. The Abhimani Devata of material Manas is Rudra. Rudra is higher than you and he controls the mind. Rudra controls the mind because inside Rudra is his Antaryami, who is the supreme being himself. So he is also driving Rudra as well. So that is how the philosophy progresses. So yes, so for your mind, to control your mind, and mind itself is very powerful, to control your mind, you should pray to Rudra, because Rudra is your first step. After Rudra is the Antaryami within Rudra, and then you pray him. So it is in that kind of steps that happens. That is one view. And there are other views where we say, we don't want any other fellows. We'll directly go to the Supreme. So that does not work because the Shastras do not say that. Shastra says, if you want to come to me, first please my family. If you please my family and you have their grace plus your guru, then you have a chance of actually pleasing me. So that is the philosophy there that progresses. But you're right, yeah. But the Antaryami is what is controlling everything. But we don't apply this in practical life because it's very complicated, and that is why we need to do abhyasa and keep thinking about this all the time.
Thank you, Madhu. Yeah.
Hi, Madhu. It's that song, Bhimsen Joshi one, if you remember. Kailasa Vasa Isha, Manasu Kodu Hariyalli Shambho. So it's praying to Shiva to give Manasu in Hari.
Yeah, very nice, Nita. I wish you could sing that full song for us.
Madhu, one quick question. You know, we talked about the yellow part and the red part. I just want to clarify the micro indriyas or whatever you want to call them. They are based in the jiva and not the linga sharira, is it?
Okay, so two things. The linga sharira is material, so that also has material indriyas. Yeah.
Okay.
So they are non-eternal because once you have that Viraja Nadi, the linga sharira is gone.
Okay.
So when the linga sharira is gone, the inner indriyas have to then get activated. So that happens in liberation.
Okay, so effectively 3 sets of indriyas.
Correct. So the two eternal indriyas, one in Stula and Sukshma, and then there is the eternal indriyas which is always with the jivas.
Okay.
Because otherwise there is no point. You know, if the jivas don't have indriyas, how will they experience their bliss? We all say, oh, it's very blissful state, they'll enjoy in blissful state. How? Unless they have their indriyas.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Thank you.
Madhu, Suresh.
Yeah.
Just a question on this Amsha and Amshi. Narayana is the Amshi for Bhinna Amsha, but Bhinna Amsha was eternally never a part of Narayana, right? The Bhinna Amsha was eternally separate.
Yes.
So how does Narayana become the Amshi? Just because the Amsha resides in Narayana, he becomes the Amshi, or what's the relationship?
So that thanks, Suresh. Complex question, needs a lot of thinking. My understanding of that is, so there is the Bimba Pratibimba Bhava relationship, which is also called Amsi and Amsha Bhava. Now, in that sense, that Amsi is the one that controls and superior. Yeah. So that is called as Amsi in that relationship, the one that controls and superior to the Amsa. Yeah, that is the Amsi Amsha Bhava. Now coming to the much more fundamental question of, I think Deval also had a similar kind of question in one of those messages that was going on, is how is it feasible that there is something called eternally separate Amsa of the Supreme? That is to say that there is this jiva, set of jivas that are eternally different and separate from Vishnu. How is that conceivable and how is that possible? Does that mean that jivas were uncreated and God is uncreated? How is that feasible? How is that possible? So that is the Bhinna Amsa that you're talking about. What does that Bhinna Amsa actually mean? Now there are two issues there, Deval, on that particular question. Number one is, if let us assume for a minute, let us assume that the jivas have come from Brahman, so that they have actually been created from Brahman. Okay, let us assume that. Okay, which is I think what you are leading to. How is that possible that jivas are uncreated? They must have been created at some point, and the only person from which they can be created is from Brahman. If you assume that point, there are two problems. The first question is, when did that happen? Okay, so when did that happen is the first question. At what point in creation destruction cycle that there was a first creation where Vishnu suddenly decided, let me make jivas and make jivas? Because our Vedas say that there was never, that creation cycles are eternal. There was never a point that creation actually started. This creation destruction has been eternally going on. Okay, so that is the first problem there, that there must have been the very first creation, and in that very first creation, this jiva should have been created. It's possible from theoretical perspective, but our refuge is the Vedas. We don't have any other source of information to confirm or refute whatever the hypothesis may be. So our evidence has to go back to the Vedas. What do the Vedas say? It says, Surya Chandramaso Data Yata Purvam Akalpayat. This is the famous verse from Rig Veda. So the Rig Veda will say that the Supreme Lord creates the universe in eternal cycles as they were before. And there was never a point where creation did not cease, or pralaya did not cease. So it's an eternal cycle is what the Vedas are telling us. First point. The second point, let us assume that Vedas are wrong and they're just some bunch of fantasy. Let us assume that. Let us say, okay, God created the jivas. Then the bigger question arises is, if God created jivas and he is so omnipotent, he is so benevolent, and he is so kind and loving, why has he created souls that are suffering? Why are they created souls that are, some souls are bad, some souls are good, some souls are rich, some souls are poor, some souls are always happy, some souls are always evil, some souls are good, some are evil. There is this whole variety of things that is there. If everything has come from this God, and that fellow is purity himself, and he is goodness himself, and from the goodness God only good souls should come. But you see the whole spectrum of souls everywhere. So you will know, if you take the view that God created souls, then you get into the fundamental philosophical problem of cruelty and partiality in the world. Discuss in one of the sessions. So now to address these two questions, the Vedic view there is Kalpana, Laghava as we call it. The easiest explanation always tends to be the right one. The easiest explanation there to say is jivas were uncreated, God is uncreated, but the eternal jivas are eternally dependent on the eternal supreme, and the affairs of samsara goes on. So these are bigger philosophical discussions and debates that, believe me, is not what I have said. This is the discussion that happens in our Vedanta. If you go to Advaita, Visishtadvaita, and Dvaita, this is the core discussion that happens, which is really interesting and extremely scientific and rational. Okay, so hope this long ranting of me was able to answer your question.
Sorry, Madhu. I mean, the question was not so much about jivas being created by Brahman. I mean, no, that I think I'm fairly clear. I was trying to understand how would you attribute Narayana as the Vishnu as the Amshi for something that was never a part of him. That's what I was trying to understand.
So when you say everything is a part of him, this universe is part of him. There's nothing that is not a part of him. So when you understand the part of him, what kind of part it is it is essential? It is his inherent part, or is it is different part? But he is constantly under control of it. So if the binna amsha that is taken there is something that is constantly under control. So the amsi controls the amsha. So that is how the bimba pratibimba, dependence and independence, amsi and amsa comes along. I hope that made sense.
No, clear. Thank you. It's not necessarily a constituent part of Vishnu. It's just that it's all encompassed within Vishnu. So, yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
So Madhu,
Yeah.
on the same lines, so if you think, should we think, the coronavirus that is there right now, does it also have a bimba and a pratibimba? And is there, how should we think of that? Or how about animals? Do they have a bimba and pratibimba? And
Yes.
why does coronavirus has to come into being right now?
Okay, so there's all sentient things, Pavan, all sentient things will have a bimba and a pratibimba. All sentient beings are subatomic jivas. Inside that subatomic jiva, the bimba will always be there. That is the view of certain Vedantic schools, that bimba will always be there. There is no sentient being where the bimba is not there. Coronavirus is not a living thing. It's a viral particle. Yeah, it is a viral particle. It is not a living thing. particle that indicates nasty things. So in that sense, viruses actually are not living things, but that is a side issue. But the Vedic view also is, where are the jivas then? Are the jivas only in living bodies? Are the jivas only in animals, plants, bacteria, and viruses? Where are the jivas? So Acharya, for example, will say, Paramanu Pradeshepi Anantahi Jiva Rashayaha. So what that means is, even in atoms, when he says there is space in the atom, even in that space in the atoms, there are innumerable number of jivas that are there. Jivas are all pervasive. They're everywhere in the universe. It is just that some jivas have acquired gross body and going through samsara. Some jivas have still not done that. And there are still lots of jivas in the atmosphere who are in Sukshma Sarira and going around. These are the ones that you would call as ghosts and whatever. So these are the fellows who are going around who still have not had their gross bodies. So in that sense, jivas are everywhere, and inside every jiva, there is always a super soul.
Madhu, this is one question I had. This is Harish.
Madhu,
So you're going
sorry.
back to the...
Suresh or Harish, we need to finish now. Maybe can you keep the question for next time, please? Because there's a puja which is starting 6 o'clock. I'm using the same Zoom ID for that. Not the same Zoom ID, from the same account.
No problem at all.
Yeah,
Harish, we'll do it next week. Yeah, yes, or send me a text and then we'll take it up as the first question, definitely, because anyway we need to start off, right?
Yeah, sorry about that, and we'll all give a big hand to Madhu. I got a couple of questions, but I'll text you, Madhu. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody, and sorry about this. Thank you. We'll give a big hand to Madhu.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhu.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhu. Thank you, Sudhakar.
Thank you, uncle.